G'day, Ed. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you, Robbie. How you doing down there under?
Yeah, really good. Had a good weekend. They had a little bit of downtime. It's Tuesday here in Sydney and Monday there in the United States. Welcome to the Unspoken Truth, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Robert Bruss, and I'm joined by my fabulous co-host, Ed Anderson, over there in Minnesota. And we're live here every day talking about the things that matter to you, pulling back the curtain behind the mainstream media and giving you the unspoken truth. We've got a lot going on the show today. I'm really excited. If this is your first time here, welcome. It's great to have you here. And if you're back for more, welcome back. I see us, Ed, nudging into the top 200 of Apple podcasts in the last couple of days, which is kind of cool.
No way.
We are.
Really?
How about that, hey?
So
in Australia, that is.
You wait until we're live before you spring that on me? Really? That's pretty cool. Wow.
I saw we were at 149. So at ranked 149 in Apple Podcast, and I think it was a little bit higher in South African podcast. There's a website called Chartable that charts it all for you. I follow on that sometimes. And I always say that no one looks closer at polls than politicians or podcasters. So let's see if we can get this podcast journeying back up near number one. The Go All In show used to be number one, so same as the Electrician's Co-op, that's still the number one spot for Sparkies. But I'd love to see this one a little bit higher up on the pecking order there in Apple as well. So I'm really excited about that.
Well, you're used to it. You're used to being the number one podcaster in the world for like, what, 6 times? So I'm
not sure what it even means, though. You're a number one. Like I say sometimes I'm like a 1990s boy band, man. You know, you have a one-hit wonder and you go all the way to the top and then you disappear from the charts and it's like, where did he go? Where did who go?
Well, it's better than never being a wonder, you know.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's true. That's true. I'll take it, right? I'll take it. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you pop open your favorite podcasting app and search for The Unspoken Truth. And you can always get some of us in your ears. We're over on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and wherever you can find podcasts. So make sure we've got some good distribution over there. So we're in all places that you can find your favorite shows. So pop over, make sure you subscribe there as well. We're also over on Twitter, getting some more followers over there. I notice when I do some live videos over there, we're live on Twitter right now, actually. We get quite a few viewers. There seems to be 30 to 50 viewers per video that we're doing, and it's slowly and incrementally growing. Particularly, we've only got a very small audience on Twitter. I'm just getting going with that. And we're over on Telegram as well, where we share a whole lot of R-rated content that we can't generally share here on YouTube. So make sure you scroll down and check out the links in the description below for more information. And don't forget to head on over and follow Ed's channel. The link to that is down in the description as well. All right, Ed, let's take a look at what we've got going on today. There's a lot happening. You've got another report on the SEC. They've been going around playing whack-a-mole with the crypto exchanges in the last couple of weeks, and you've got some really good information about how corrupt they actually are. You know, you mentioned to me just in the Facebook Messenger on the way to this show today that, hey, this is what you're going to talk about, and I quickly Googled it, and I pulled out 3 articles, and I went to YouTube and I pulled out a transcript. I didn't read them, I didn't look at it, and I fed it all to ChatGPT, and then I said, tell me why the SEC is corrupt, and it went, and it told me why the SEC was corrupt, and I was like, there you go, it really is.
So now you're starting to believe me? You don't believe me, but you believe ChatGPT. I don't know.
I wasn't sure, right? I had to do the research. I went down the rabbit hole just like with 3 things in a video there, and ChatGPT summarized it and told me, yeah, it definitely is corrupt.
Well, you know, this is an important topic, especially for people who are in the crypto space. So I know this is like my 3rd one in a row on this topic, but there's a reason why I'm talking about it right now. You know, being a crypto consumer is difficult enough as it is, without having the government actively trying to make your life even more difficult. And it's all because they have an agenda. And these people are corrupt, and I'm going to talk about it in my presentation.
All right. Did you go out into the stable on the way here and get your high horse out, or are you all right today?
Yeah, I got the biggest one I could find, the biggest high horse I could find.
It's like a Western movie, you know, the saloon with the doors. Like I come in and I got like my pistols on my hip, the quick draw stuff. All right, folks. So I got a little bit of a follow-up and a report on the DPRK. So North Korea are now supporting Russia. And Mr. Kim Jong-un himself, the living deity of North Korea, says that he thinks that it's all a good thing that Russia has invaded Ukraine. And I've got a couple of links I want to share with you on a World War III roundup. This thing is escalating at a speed that you possibly couldn't imagine. There's no more exercises, folks. There's only exercises discussed as, or disguised rather, as potential invasions. So we could be seeing the start of the counteroffensive in Ukraine as the ruse for the time for NATO to get involved in this. I'm going to be sharing some more about that. So, but before we kick off today, I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining us and helping us to grow the podcast and helping us to grow the channel as well. I see the YouTube algorithm is serving up a little bit more information to the subscribers of our channels, and I see that we're starting to get quite a reasonable following per video. Over the last 4 weeks, I think we've seen like a 10 to 12x jump in the viewership, not necessarily on the lives, but in the totality of the numbers. So it's really tracking it along well, and I just got to say thank you, because we can't do that without the viewers that are tuning into us on a daily basis. YouTube is an absolute slog, as people would know. There's no fast way to do anything like this. And the consistency and the persistence that Ed shows here with me is really starting to pay dividends. So thanks, Ed, and thanks to all the viewers.
Oh, thank you, Rob. It's a lot of fun. Find a job that you love and you never work a day in your life, right? So yeah, I
that's
love
the way
this.
it goes. Absolutely. All right, why don't you kick it off, mate, and share a little bit about what you got for the SEC? I see you got a little report there.
Yeah, I do have a little report, so let's get to it, and then we'll move to the discussion. This is an important update on the war against cryptocurrencies by our SEC. So let's talk about it. Okay, so the other day I did a report for you describing the war that the SEC is waging on the crypto space. But just a couple of days ago, Gary Gensler, the chairman of the SEC, was out commenting about the crypto space, and he told you exactly how he felt about it. And he clearly stated that the entire crypto space is just infested with
hucksters, fraudsters, scam artists, Ponzi schemes, the public being left in line at the bankruptcy courts. We've seen this story before.
So forget the fact that the traditional banking system is rife with fraud. American banks are doing very little to recover and reimburse billions upon billions of dollars stolen from customers each year, according to a new report. People are struggling to get their banks to protect them from massive and systemic checking fraud, reports NBC Los Angeles. The traditional banking system, particularly in America, is just riddled with all kinds of fraud that it is not protecting their customers from. Keep in mind that the combined market cap of all the cryptos in the entire crypto space throughout the world comes in at less than $1 trillion. And Bitcoin and Ethereum make up more than 60% of that. So of that entire $1 trillion global market cap, Bitcoin and Ethereum all by themselves make up about $600 billion of that market cap. The remaining $400 billion is spread amongst all the other cryptos out there in the world. But according to Gary Gensler, it is just rife with
hucksters, fraudsters, scam artists, Ponzi schemes, hucksters, fraudsters, scam artists, Ponzi schemes.
So when the entire global market cap of the entire crypto space is less than $1 trillion, it's very easy to manipulate. It's very easy to push around. As a matter of fact, Gary Gensler himself apparently loves this whole idea of manipulating. It's being reported that SEC Chairman Gary Gensler has been charged with market manipulation. Coinbase has allegedly presented evidence of him placing over $2.5 million in Bitcoin shorts just 48 hours ago. Okay, this is beautiful. Remember, just 4 months ago, the SEC extorted $100 million out of Coinbase, and then last week sued them anyway. I mean, I'm thinking, why would Gary Gensler have an account at Coinbase to begin with? If he hates Coinbase so much, why would he have an account there? And why would he be so stupid as to place that big of a short on Bitcoin? Maybe this guy isn't as bright as everyone thinks he is.
Hucksters, fraudsters, scam artists, Ponzi schemes.
And some people in Congress are starting to realize how corrupt this guy is. This is a tweet from Senator Bill Hagerty. Senator Bill Hagerty hinted at some congressional action against Gary Gensler and the SEC for weaponizing their roles to kill the cryptocurrency industry. So apparently, at least some people in Congress have Gary Gensler on their radar. Now, in case you haven't noticed, that in the past couple of days, the altcoin industry, the altcoin groups, those are primarily all the coins outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum, okay? They had like a dramatic 1 hour drop, like 20% across the board. And there are all sorts of theories about why that happened. And one of those theories is that a lot of these big exchanges are going to start delisting a lot of these coins that the SEC is targeting. Robinhood delisting ADA, Matic, and SOL could put significant sell pressure on these tokens. Robinhood holds about $1.3 billion in altcoins. According to rough calculations by Fabian, 583 million of this may be held in ADA, Matic, and Sol. So users who still hold those tokens will be forced to sell on June 27th. Now, there is another theory out there that is, quite possible. And that is that a few large investors out there, a few large traders out there are purposely trying to depress these altcoins in preparation of a nice dramatic move upward, a huge accumulation phase. That could absolutely be the case. So if you're an aggressive trader and you have a little money that you can afford to lose, you want to play with, you might want to consider taking a position in some of these coins as they're being washed out. Because after this washout, there could be an accumulation phase in these coins. And when they're at these levels, it doesn't take very much to have some really nice returns on them. That's not a recommendation. I'm just throwing it out there for you to consider. Listen, this entire crypto space is not dead. Crypto's not going to go away. Now, I do think that most cryptos are not going to survive this. Most cryptos are going to disappear. They are going to be gone. But in the ashes of all this, there are going to be some really good opportunities. Now, there's no way of knowing for sure right now which coins are going to be the phoenixes that rise out of the ashes. But the crypto space is not going away. As tiny as it is, there will always be opportunities. But just understand that this entire crypto space is still the wild, wild west. The days when the average person could throw $1,000 into a random meme coin and become a millionaire by the end of the summer, those days are gone. But that doesn't mean those kind of opportunities will not be there. They will be there. They'll be there here and there. But there are corrupt people in government who are trying to delegitimize the entire crypto space. But that's because they have an agenda. It's not because they're looking out for you. A shout out to Crypto Casey for some of the Gensler memes. And just remember, whether you're looking at the crypto space or the stock market or the bond market or the housing market or the United States government, there are always going to be
Hucksters, fraudsters, scam artists, Ponzi schemes, hucksters, fraudsters, scam artists, Ponzi schemes, hucksters, fraudsters, scam artists, Ponzi schemes, hucksters, fraudsters, scam artists, Ponzi schemes.
And that's my report for the day.
I'm glad you injected a little bit of humor in there, mate. It's an otherwise very dry topic, isn't it? And, you wonder how Nancy Pelosi got rich. So you wonder how Gary Gensler got rich. He got rich by going short on Bitcoin, right? There it is. What a scammer. He's this huckster and scammer himself.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh, yeah. Talking about manipulating. So he shorts it and then he sues the entire crypto space. He's going after all of them. It's the things these people get away with. And he will get away with it.
It's like the cops investigating themselves for something. It's ridiculous. Like you can't do that, right? You need to have independence. You need to be at arm's length from these things. And what do you think about the system just being set up wrong, Ed? I think that's why these things continue to happen, because these people find themselves in positions of authority, but they still find themselves doing these things. Like I saw that the other day, and I scrolled past the fact that he was shorting the Bitcoin market because I didn't believe it. But I did see it again and again and again, and I'm thinking, is this propaganda? Is this people just going against him? Is that coming out? I just didn't go down the rabbit hole with it. So with the benefit of the doubt, saying that that is actually true, that he really did do that, why is this happening? Is it the culture? Is it the system? You know, we talk about cronyism and all of this capitalist society that we live in all the time. It's not capitalism, it's cronyism, where everybody's out for themselves and everybody's scratching everybody else's back, horse trading in the process. Is that what's going on here, or is it something else?
Well, yes. Well, that's been going on for decades, right? But specifically related to the crypto space, the government sees that the crypto industry as an existential threat to their dominance over the monetary system. You know, and they can't have that, especially now that they have their precious CBDC coming up. So they don't like the idea that people could conduct business outside of their monetary system. They can't have that, you know. So if you're a sovereign human being and you want to have the freedom to conduct business any way you want, the crypto space has been a godsend for the past several years. But now the government sees it as a threat, and even though it's only $1 trillion total market cap, you know, but the idea that someone listen. When they bring the CBDC on, a lot of people might use that as a catalyst to go to Bitcoin. Because they say, well, no, I know the difference between your coin and Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a tool. So they might say, well, that is ironically going to give Bitcoin a big boost in popularity. So in order to do that, we have to make it difficult for people to conduct business in the crypto space. So this is a coordinated, concerted effort by our government. I think governments around the world to make it difficult for the crypto consumer to conduct business outside of the fiat system. And that's what this is primarily about.
So my question to you then, Ed, is crypto still worth it, man? Is it still worth participating in? Is it still worth having a punt here and there? And, you know, is it a trading opportunity, or is it a buy and hold opportunity? Is it a long position you're holding on to? I mean, if you ask a bunch of different people, you're going to get a bunch of different answers. What do you think?
Well, if you're going to go into the crypto space, you better plan on getting educated. There's a lot to learn. You know, it's not like just opening an account at a bank and then you're done. No, there's a lot to learn. You got to learn how exchanges work. You got to learn the differences between the exchanges, because they're not all the same. You got to understand the difference between a crypto that trades on an exchange and one that doesn't. You know, it's a complicated world. So it's gonna take some patience on your part to learn about all the nuances of that space, because not every crypto is created equally. They all serve different purposes, you know. And let's get our nomenclature correct. Bitcoin is the only actual cryptocurrency. Okay, now we call them all cryptocurrencies because it's convenient, right? But Bitcoin is the only one that's an actual true cryptocurrency, in the sense that it is truly, you know, not deregulated. What's the word? It's truly
decentralized.
Thank you, decentralized. There is no controlling person or entity in the center of it. It's out there,
CIA.
and it's out there in the zeitgeist.
CIA.
It's out there.
CIA. Let's get our nomenclature really correct, shall we? Let's go all the way there.
Conspiracy. Yeah,
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Yeah. I mean, by the end of the day, we're going to see an alien, you know, with a crypto coin.
The Dogecoin.
Yeah, yeah. So but there are huge advantages in using the crypto space to conduct your business if you can learn how to do it. But it's going to take a little education on your part. You should, everyone out there, if they're going to be a crypto consumer, I strongly suggest you join some kind of a community that you know, to help you, you know, get your questions answered. I mean, we're joking today. So I haven't bought a crypto in over a year. But I bought my first crypto today, and it's one of those memes. And I've been working on it for 3 days trying to buy the thing. You know, it's not. I had to figure out how to do it, and I finally got a portion of it done. Now I get so they're throwing up roadblocks even for me. And I'm savvier than the average person, but I'm not savvier than, you know, the guys who do this, you know every day. So it took me 3 days to relearn how to use a certain DApp program, and but finally I got it. So, but in this case, the potential payoff could be massive. So it's like you told me once about people getting into programs. If people want to get in badly enough, they'll find a way.
They'll find a way. Yeah.
They'll figure it out. So you have to decide whether it's worth it for you. As far as trading goes, take the usual trading lessons about trading things and be hypersensitive. You have to apply those techniques in a very hypersensitive. Cryptos don't trade like stocks.
I was going to say it's a different animal altogether.
Yeah, it's a different. It's a different animal. So it is a different category of trading vehicles. It is a lot of the traditional rules of trading you can throw out the window when it comes to cryptos.
Yeah, that's just because the volume's not in the market, right? You can't trade crypto the same way you trade Forex because there's literally $100 gazillion a day in Forex going through those markets. And, the moves are so tiny and trying to scalp out a market like that is very difficult compared to trying to do something like that in a crypto. Yeah. So
I mean, there are two cryptos that are kind of systematic to the group: Bitcoin and Ethereum. Right? They're those are workhorses. Right. Everything else, is it's. I got to think of a better term than Wild Wild West because that's overused.
It fits right in with our high horse, right? You come in the saloon with your pistols drawn like that, ready for a glass of whiskey or something like that. It is the Wild West. I have to agree with Gary Gensler there a little bit. Part of the reason that there's no mainstream adoption of crypto and the market's not bigger than actually what it is, part of the reason I lost a bit of faith in crypto, Ed, is because the idea of something like Bitcoin, where it's decentralized, it's immutable, you can't change it, there's only so many of them, it has that value, it takes effort to actually mine it, all of those things, it ticks all of the boxes that you would want. And if you're a true believer in crypto and you're a true believer of an alternative system, then Bitcoin is it. There's simply nothing better than Bitcoin to actually to be the alternative to a fiat currency. Nothing, literally nothing better.
Right.
But the problem that we've faced since that thing came out of the woodwork when the CIA created it is that everybody that's a true believer in it can see that it's it's like one of these really good ruses that they have. There's always some element of truth to the lie that they're actually telling you, and you can't really discern the difference between what the true part is and what the bad part is. And the problem is that there's these crypto evangelists saying this is the alternative system, and there's been governments around the world that have even bought crypto and using Bitcoin as the actual means of exchange for themselves. So when you look at that, you think, okay, cool, that's awesome. Well, then why is it the Wild West? And my view is the reason for that is because crypto in its totality is just treated like any other investment. It's been treated like a commodity, like a stock, like a bond, and people are just looking at it as an opportunity. You got back into the altcoin that you're looking at because you see it as an opportunity for massive accelerated growth, and you're like, okay, cool, I'm gonna grab the coattails of this thing and off we go. But the reality is, Bitcoin was never designed for that. Bitcoin was designed as an alternative means to the existing fiat system, which solves all of those problems. It solves all of them. That is the solution to it. But because everyone treats crypto in its totality as a mainstream opportunity, that's why it's the Wild Wild West. That's why they have those Ponzi schemes. That's why you have those scammers. That's why you have this thing that goes up and then goes down and it keeps happening, is because people are just trying to capitalize on an opportunity. And that's got to do with the fundamentals of human nature of fear and greed. Mm-hmm. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. And that's why I lost faith in it completely. And that's why I got out of it completely as well.
Well, I mean, if you're going to be in the crypto space, just like if you're going to be a trader, you got to get your head screwed on straight. You don't don't watch a couple of YouTube videos and then go. Okay, there are things you need to learn. The things you need to, if you're going to do any kind of trading, but particularly in the crypto space. Now, my theory on why the crypto space is so wrecked right now. Well, there are a few key events, right? Like the Luna disaster that we had, last year, 2 years ago now, that where it just came off the rails and things people couldn't trust. Now, every market, every monetary system is built on trust, right? When trust is lost, it's hard to get that back. And the crypto space, since that one event, there's been a couple of other events along the way.
FTX.
Right, FTX, right. So things like that, people lose, they lose faith, they lose confidence. Now, one of the reasons why that's the case is the government refuses to give the industry proper guidelines. The government, so like in Coinbase, for example, Coinbase is famous, by the way, for bending over backward, for bending themselves over a table for the SEC. Whatever you want, man, at the expense of their customers. They're not
Well,
very
let me just interject there, because the reason that the government, my view, the reason that the government doesn't give them proper guidelines and proper guardrails to actually comply with is because then the government can't use things like FTX as the world's biggest money laundering scheme.
Yeah,
Because that's what it was. It was a
That's what it
giant
was.
money laundering scheme for the Democratic Party.
Yep.
And not enough attention has been given to that because mainstream media is owned by the Democratic Party. So no one picks at that scab or pulls on that thread to actually show the world that, hey, this whole thing was a giant money laundering scheme. The money that is going to Ukraine, running back through FTX, paying back donations to Democratic politicians. What the hell? And then it all gets found out. It's no wonder that they haven't actually given them guardrails, because you can't operate a scam like that. You can't operate a money laundering scheme like that if you've got regulations and rules in place.
Yeah, but see, the industry is not standardized, right? So you have God knows how many exchanges out there. We have far fewer today, but we have a bunch of exchanges out there. Each have their So one honors the Ethereum exchange, the other one honors the Binance exchange. One honors this kind of USDT, the other one doesn't.
Isn't that just a free market, though? Isn't that what you want in a free
Well,
market?
that's
For
what I
people to
mean.
do whatever
Sure.
and the market sorts itself out.
That's right. Well, this is one of the reasons why I've been telling people that if you're going to be a crypto consumer, you have to have multiple accounts.
Yep.
And that's one of the reasons why, because they're not standardized. Well, but this is part of the growing. Remember, this entire industry is basically 5 years old or 4 years old. It's still learning how to walk. So if the government would let it evolve, the private industry will solve all those problems. Some guy is going to come along.
Capitalism will sort that out.
That's right. I think I told you. I sent a letter. I sent an email to Elon. I'm waiting to hear from him. He should get on it, man. He can own that industry. They put together a proper exchange, address all the issues in one shot, a one-stop shop, because he will be the only one who will have done it. Take all the issues, take all the best parts of every exchange, and put it in one place, and people. He would own that that industry. But he's got his own. I mean, he hates SEC more than we do. I mean,
well, remember Elon had to get off. That was one of the articles that I pulled out. Actually, was about him and Tesla and stuff. Remember, Elon got off Bitcoin because of the ESG stuff. So he was a big holder of Bitcoin, and then BlackRock came out with all their ESG BS about 2 or 3 years ago, whatever it was, and then he dumped his Bitcoin position. And then but he liked crypto and came back in via the Dogecoin thing. That took off into the stratosphere. Remember that?
Yes. Oh, look, he's not afraid of cryptos. He knows all about them. I mean, Shiba is his coin, right? And he was on Saturday Night Live talking about the Shiba, during his heyday, and so he part of that's fun. Look, you just got to understand, this is not the traditional monetary system. We are in the crypto space. They're breaking new ground, new ways of conducting business. Blockchain. Look at blockchain, for example, which underlies all this. People now, it's a big deal now in New York real estate, where they're now starting to sell their real estate on the blockchain, right? You can buy pieces of it, and you don't have to go to your attorney's office to sign all sorts of documents anymore, because you have a unique whatever thingamajig that
that underlying technology is great, right? And that is the future of actually doing business. I want to close out this little segment here, Ed, and just remind people that crypto is not just the Wild West. It can be any opportunity that you see to be in an investment or to get some upside of something. I think we were talking a couple of weeks ago. I met with a pretty sophisticated property investor here in Sydney, and she she was doing really well for herself. She had 30 odd projects underway, and it was going really well. And I asked her, you know, what are you seeing in this industry? Because what I hear from my real estate agent mates is there's just simply no stock. And, you know, that's the ever-present problem in an overcooked market, is that nobody wants to sell their property. They're holding on to it for as long as humanly possible to get the upside. And she said in the development space, what she's seeing is a whole bunch of developers, well, a whole bunch of properties for sale with the development applications already approved. So you see the sign and it says DA approved, and there's like a picture of the CAD design of this beautiful building that can fit on that property there. And so what they're doing is they're buying the property, they're going away and going through all the council and then selling that kind of off the plan to the developer. And the reason I said to her, why aren't people following through? Why the developers buy it? Why aren't they following all the way through? And she said, because they can't find the builders. And the builders don't have the staff. For some reason, there's an employment problem in the construction industry, and then there's a materials problem in the construction industry, which is a little bit of a hangover from COVID and all the supply chain issues that we've had. But then you've also got problems with the increase in fuel prices in transport, and then you've got massive problems with inflation as well. So there's several builders that are going out of business because of the conditions in the economy. So if you're going to buy a property off the plan, or you're a developer looking to get involved in something, there's considerable risk with that as well. And I think you did a good job at the end of your report there, as you always do, in just highlighting and reminding people that, you know, crypto is the Wild West, but so is property development. But so is getting involved in, you know, shares about a company that has like terrible management. You know, you can lose your shirt just as quickly over there in the share market as you can in the property market, as you can in the crypto market. You have to be educated on these things. And
Yeah.
you've got to surround yourself with the right people.
Yeah.
So is it worth it, man? Should people still be in crypto?
Yes.
I
think
should.
so. Yeah, because
that's a yes from you.
Yeah, I think it is the future. No, I don't see any particular need. You don't need to be in a hurry right now because of the state of the crypto space. But it's not going away, because most coins are not going to survive this little period of time that we're in. Most of them are going to disappear. So you shouldn't feel a sense of urgency. You're not missing anything at the moment.
No FOMO.
Yeah. Now, except for the one that I just bought, that I feel really good.
Quick, let's go.
Yeah, quick.
Man. Come on, get your $500 in there now.
That's the. I mean, that's the first crypto I bought in over a year.
I'm on the other side of the ledger, folks. Ed is the trader, right? And he's never playing with money that he can't afford to lose, and he's only ever doing it with a small amount anyway. And if you lose it, it's like whatever. And if you're getting the upside of it, you're always pulling out your initial seed capital anyway, and just letting your winners run.
Exactly right.
You know, that's all box standard stuff.
I'm gonna have you in this thing by the end of the week. You watch.
If you join Twitter, I'll join that.
Okay, deal. Well, I'll get back to you on that.
You were using Twitter in that report. I'm going to call you out on that. What the hell? He's quoting tweets. Has he got an account that he hasn't told me about? Too funny. All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Resourceful man. Yeah.
Let's shift gears, and we want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by you. In this crazy, uncertain world, we all need a way to protect and insulate ourselves from the outside forces that we simply cannot control. I'm a news junkie, and after a lifetime of constantly immersing myself in the darkness and the despair that engulfs the world, the path to shield myself and my family has become crystal clear. I want to invite you to come and join me in the Unspoken Truth community, where I'll show you how I protect my family from this crazy world. You'll get access to 3 masterclasses worth over $1,000, as well as our live events, training, and community of truthers just like you. Come on over to the unspokentruth.com.au and join us for just 50 cents a day. What are you waiting for? Get started now at the unspokentruth.com.au. All right, I want to shift gears to something maybe a little bit more serious than the SEC stuff. That's kind of a little bit fun to talk about, but we've had some major developments over the last, I guess, I want to say 72 hours. The first thing is that counteroffensive is underway properly in Ukraine, and I want to share my screen here with you. So let me just grab that and sort that out. So, alrighty. So the first thing I want to do is share the deep state map with you. So as I look at the deep state map, I can see just here. You can see if you just click over to the right hand side here, you see the little calendar, history calendar. So this is on the 9th of June. Today is the 13th of June. So 4 days ago, if I fast forward the clock here, if you just look over here to the side of where this reservoir is, that's where the dam was blown up. You can see the Ukrainians taking a fair bit of ground back there as well. So they've encroached in here. And as I come across the map here to the eastern side, I can see that the fighting is ongoing along this front line here. And they've made some inroads just a little bit over here, and Vela Novosilka, just to the north of where they are there. So they're making some inroads. So if I just pull the map back a couple of days to the 9th there, you can see the counteroffensive started there, and they've taken that ground back there as well. The blue denotes that they're holding the ground there, and the grey denotes that the fighting is still ongoing. So there's a little bit of fighting in and around Volodar as well, and not really very much going on up around Bakhmut up to the north there as well. The point is that the counteroffensive is underway, and despite what you may be hearing in mainstream media, there's still complete and total radio silence from the Ukrainian side. Actually, there's not much being said from their side. I've got a whole bunch of Russian Telegram channels that are part of my Telegram that I look at, and I can see these people actually being engaged by the enemy as well. There's a video here that I pulled out from the UATV. So this is the Ukrainian official, maybe the way I want to say that. You know, there's no delicate way to say this, folks. This is the Ukrainian propaganda. This is what they want you to hear. So this is intercepted phone calls from Russian soldiers, and this particular video, I'm not going to play it because they're talking Russian and it's just the subtitles, right? But what they're saying is they blew up the dam, and it was a team of saboteurs that blew up the dam. And if I pull it through there, you'll see there as well. But you know, I've been listening to these phone calls since the start of the war, and I kind of think, you know, is any of it even real? How do you know? How do you know you just don't have two Russian guys talking to each other and somebody's pressing the record button? The answer is you just don't know. You don't know. There's no way to verify if that's true or not. But if it is true, it's pretty damning, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So they've said that the dam was blown up by a team of Russian saboteurs, and it didn't do what they wanted it to do. And there's a couple of Russian soldiers on the phone talking back home to their family, complaining to their family that, this is like an absolute disaster. And there's one guy in that particular call talking about how they don't have food or water or clothes or anything to keep them warm and stuff like that as well. So again, just take it all with a grain of salt, because it could be what they want you to hear. And likewise with all of this deep state map stuff as well. You know, I look at it and go, okay, the fighting's ongoing there on the front lines, and that's what they're showing you. And you look at the videos that they look at, you look at the open source intelligence, you look at the timestamps and the location, the GPS location of the videos that you see, and the uploads of those videos. And look, you know, there's ways to game that system and whatnot as well. But a lot of this is verified, and it's verified by the deep state team. That's actually what they do. So I just want to move on from there because it's a bit of a stalemate, but I want to also show you here that this is what's going on. And I said at the top of the show, there's no more exercises, there's only disguises. And in Germany, the biggest NATO air exercise ever in history is about to kick off. So 25 nations are taking part in a 2-week-long exercise called Air Defender with around 10,000 personnel and 250 aircraft. So it begs the question to me, is this actually the beginning of the NATO and Russian engagement? There aren't no more exercises. This is all bullshit. You know, all the Russians under the guise of an exercise saying that we're not going to invade Ukraine, and likewise here, NATO, we're not going to invade Russia or strike Crimea or anything like that. And when you look at that, the air task order that they could pull out for 250 aircraft could completely destroy the Russian front lines in a matter of days, which would allow the Ukrainians to go and take the ground with their troops as well. So I wonder, is this the beginning of World War III right here? You know, that's why I called it the World War III roundup. It's possible, you know, when you look at the deep state map and you look at the Russian positions where they're dug in, there's a lot of satellite photos about that. As you look towards Melitopol here in the middle, the way that they're dug in is in 3 or 4 different depths, if you like. So the first one is the obstacles to slow them down, then there's the infantry, and then there's the armor obstacles as well. And the Russians are dug in properly and they're not running away. But air power would destroy all of that and enable the Ukrainians to roll them up pretty quickly as well. So gosh, if there's 250 aircraft ready to go, I kind of wonder what's going on. Why do they put this out there anyway? Why are NATO talking about running exercises. Why wouldn't they keep that on the lowdown, particularly if you're doing it right on the border of Russia? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me why they're putting that out there. You know, is this a show of force? We already know that you've got that. Why are they doing that? So, and this is the NATO website, by the way. So I look at this and just wonder what's going on behind it. Meanwhile, in North Korea, we have Kim Jong-un saying he wants to hold hands with Vladimir Putin as Russia and North Korea ties deepen. I don't really know what that means, that translation, he wants to hold hands. I mean, I think that what he's saying is that they want closer ties. So they're quoting him, that's what he says there, he wants to hold hands. So essentially what Pyongyang are saying is that the North Koreans support everything that the Russians are doing. So talk about the axis of evil. George Bush was right when he said that. Russia, North Korea, they are definitely in cahoots together. And it makes me wonder, would this actually be going on if Donald Trump was still in play? Because Donald Trump seemed to take the heat out of that conversation and all the missile testing went away. But as soon as Donald Trump went away, the missile testing ramped up to a point where we've never seen it before at that type of level. And their nuclear program has accelerated as well. So, you know, it begs the question, what would happen if Donald Trump got back in, and what would have happened if he was there? Would any of this garbage be going on? And I don't know. Trump says that there's no way Putin ever would have invaded, and he would have got in between these two guys and stopped anything from happening there as well, because the relations between the US and the DPRK were cooling down. Even though nothing was really happening, they were certainly cooling down, and Trump did a good job taking the heat out of that conversation, even though he didn't really do anything in the end. Like, there was no definitive outcome. And I guess the outcome that you could measure, the measurable thing there, is that Kim had slowed down on his missile testing. But as I mentioned, as soon as Trump went away, that actually accelerated as well. On the topic of missile testing, we reported just a couple of days ago that Iran says that they now have hypersonic missiles, and that's the hypersonic missile that they've got there. But they've also said that they're just literally a couple of days away from having a nuke. And Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is warning the West that it cannot stop his country from obtaining nuclear weapons. So, man, oh man, I look at that and just think, well, what is really going on? That's what's happening on the front side of this. But what's happening behind the curtain? What is the unspoken truth? The unspoken truth is they've already got nukes, right? And I just want to pull on this thread a little bit, because this is a serious thing. When the Iranians have said for a long time that as soon as they get a nuke, they're going to destroy Israel. They've said that for a long time. And the Israelis have said for a long time, the equal amount of time, that we're never going to allow you to have a nuke. So it says to me that if Khamenei is coming out and in mainstream media reporting, saying that you can't stop us and we're just a couple of days from having it. And further down in that report, he goes, Iran doesn't want nuclear weapons. We don't want them. We don't want that. So there's a doctrine that was created, I want to say in 2010. It was Iranian doctrine where they came out and said nuclear weapons are actually Sharia. And what they said is nuclear EMP weapons are Sharia use of EMP, because the nuke actually doesn't kill anybody. We let the nuke off in the atmosphere and it turns the power off. And the fact that there's no power means that you die because there's no power, not because of a nuclear apocalypse. So, you know, their idea of nuclear weapons and, you know, their strange religious fundamental ideology and, you know, how they're justifying the use of nuclear weapons just doesn't make any sense to me, but that's what they're saying. And I look at that and think, well, if they're saying that they're just literally a couple of days away from obtaining a nuke if they wanted to, and what's worse, they've got a delivery system for it. Plenty of countries have tried to get nuclear weapons before, but they've just got no ways to deliver them. But we know the Iranians have got a really sophisticated missile system, and if they've got hypersonic missiles, whether they work or not, doesn't really matter. If they've got ballistic missiles, which we know that they do, and they have used them against Americans and allies before, and they're very effective, we know that that delivery system is capable of putting the nuke on the end of it. We're in big trouble. And the Israelis are in big trouble as well. And it says to me that we could just be just a couple of weeks away from an Israeli and Iranian conflict. And whether or not the Americans support them is altogether actually irrelevant, because Israel has said we will do whatever we need to do with or without a coalition to stop them from getting a nuke, because they're threatening to destroy us. And I look at that and go, man, this is escalating. And when you look at the headlines, you look at a bunch of different websites that I pull my sources from. Ground News is one. There's the Guardian one there is a really good source as well. There's several sources that I'm pulling them from. No one's really talking about it. That's not really a big news story, but actually I believe it's the biggest news story in the world because everyone's distracted by UFOs at the moment and aliens and shit like that and the counteroffensive. But Iran getting a nuke is the biggest story in the world, and them coming out and saying they're a couple of days away from it, that just says to me that the Israelis are a couple of days away from a Top Gun type attack against their nuclear facilities. And is their intelligence good enough to actually say where their stuff is and what's happening? Man, oh man, I just look at this and think there's no more exercises. There's just disguises. So we're about to kick off there in Europe. They're about to kick off there in the Middle East, and potentially North Korea supporting Russia to escalate that conflict. Just a matter of time before Kim puts his hand up and goes, hey, do you want a couple of battalions of soldiers? I'll help you out here. Don't need the ammo? I'll send you the troops as well. What about that? What then? What happens if North Korea gets involved then? Man, oh man, this is a very complicated situation. And my view is it's very, very scary. And we're on the precipice of something big here.
Well, if I were a North Korean soldier, I'd be eager to volunteer to go fight in Ukraine because then
get something to eat.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You beat me to it. Yeah, you get something to eat.
Those guys, man, they're slaves.
Yeah. As far as Iran goes, I have to think and hope that this is a negotiation ploy, saying that, we're just a few days away from getting our nukes and you can't stop us. They probably want something. I think it's probably an extortion tactic. And unless you give us so much money, or unless you give us, whatever it is, they need.
Well, that was the idea of the JCPOA, but that went away the minute. So that deal went away the minute they started giving the Russians drones and giving the Russians missiles as well. And I'm surprised. There was a couple of months, must have been 6 or 7 months ago, the Iranians came out and said that they were going to start supplying ballistic missiles to the Russians as well. And if they had have done that, I believe that would have been a red line. That would have been a bridge too far for everyone to cross. And they said that they were going to do that, and the Russians said that they were going to receive them, but none of that has actually proven to be true. So the best the Iranians can do is give you the Shahid drones, and then they're building a factory as well to say, here's how you build them. You can build them under license right here. Go for it.
Well, as far as these red lines and these trigger points, I think that there is a cadre, there is a group of people in our country, in America, of the power centers who are itching for a war. And listen, this is. Let's just agree right now that although the Ukrainian soldier in the front line is going to disagree with me, this is not really a war between Ukraine and Russia. This is a war. This is a war between America and Russia. This is a proxy war, and we have people in our government who are egging this war on, and they've done things they've gotten in the way of potential peace talks. They said they shut them down. They don't want to see peace. There are forces at work in the world, mostly related to money. This is and the one world, government that they want to lead us to. There are people out there who see a benefit in there being a world war that will redound to their objectives, and that's really scary to know. Because these people do have all the power. If NATO really did want to cross into Ukraine, they could. Who's going to stop them?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing would stop them. And that's my fear, right? There are no exercises; they're just disguises, and it could be a complete disguise for this is now we're going to attack the Russians, and we need to see the Ukrainians successful. We need to see that happen. I did a little thought bubble over the weekend for myself because I wanted to just get it off my chest. There are no good outcomes here. Sometimes in business and in life, you just have to pick the least worst outcome. It's the way I describe my life sometimes. There's this option. I have to stay up, till 11 o'clock to pick up my daughter up from some stupid club in the city or something like that. Or I can let her get home by herself at 11 o'clock at night. There's no good options. I don't want to get in the car and do that. No, I got to stay up late, even though I've been awake since 4 o'clock this morning. I'll go to bed. I'll put my alarm on. I'll do there's just shit options. That's a ridiculous example of my boring life, which is kind of good. I'm glad I got a boring life and not too exciting. But in Ukraine, there's really three things that are going to happen. we've got the NATO summit coming up in a couple of weeks. I think it's in two weeks, I want to say, or 3 weeks maybe. And the Ukrainians haven't been invited, and the Ukrainians are insisting on being invited. They're insisting on being part of NATO. And if they're not invited to NATO this time around, they might be invited next year. So you're not coming into NATO. No, there's a war underway. You can't come in. And they've said that consistently like that. But if they don't get that, they might get a security guarantee. And if they get a security guarantee, that's just as good as being
it's the same
part
thing.
of NATO. It's the same thing, right?
It's
so
semantics.
yeah, so you're really kind of just shuffling words around a page to say the difference. What is the difference? What do you get if you get a security guarantee? You know, does that mean you now get air cover? And when you get air cover, does that mean you actually get close air support as well? And how do we get the close air support because you don't have JTACs inside of your actual troops and, you know, combat controllers inside of your platoons and your sections there? So that means we've got to put our combat controllers and our JTACs in there to actually make that happen. And now we've got close air support, so now we're directly involved in the conflict. So if they're invited to NATO, that's an escalation. If they're given a security guarantee, that's an escalation. If their counteroffensive works and they succeed in cutting Russia off from Crimea, they cut them off down the middle in the southern part of Ukraine, and then they blow the Kerch Bridge, which is the natural next step to actually cut them off completely. And now they have the capacity to do that with Storm Shadow. We know that. They have the capacity with longer range weapon systems to make it happen. And by the time the counteroffensive is underway to actually do that, you'll have F-16s in country as well in the next 2 to 3 months. Now you've got that capacity to do that. So that's an escalation. And several times over the last year, Dmitry Medvedev has come out and said, if you attack Crimea, that's as good as attacking Russia. If you try and take back that ground, that's like trying to take back Russian ground, which represents an existential threat. And if you look at the Russian doctrine, that means nuclear weapons. We will nuke you. So they're the three options that we're faced with at the moment. Join NATO, get a NATO security guarantee, or the counteroffensive is successful. My worry is that the first two things won't happen and the counteroffensive won't be successful. They'll fail. And then we just end up in a stalemate, a complete stalemate, worse than what it is now, where the Russians don't really have the resources they need to take any more ground, and the Ukrainians' military is completely and totally depleted, and the only thing that we can do is go in there and help them, actually. And there was one more option there as well, is a coalition of the willing. So the Polish have been talking about actually going in there, just with their military. But then suddenly Poland becomes a target for Russia, and if Russia attack Poland, then does that trigger Article 5? Well, it's just
it should.
There are no good options in any of it.
Okay. All right. Well, look, I can think of a fifth option.
What's that? Russia pull out completely?
No, that all this ends at a big wooden table with Zelensky wearing a "I Love Russia" sweater, signing the BRICS agreement.
Doesn't say "I am Ukrainian"; it'll say "I am part of Belt and Road."
That's right. That's right. And
I love bricks.
Yeah, I love BRICS.
That's the Brussik, remember?
Yeah, Brussik. Very good. Yeah, Brussik. Yeah. Listen, I think that. Personally, I do think that's the way this is all going to end. Now, when you said earlier that you don't see any good options, listen, that's because you are a freedom-loving, sovereign human being who doesn't like war and who doesn't like death, and you're being very unreasonable, Rob. Because from a certain perspective, this is a huge success, right? If you're Larry Fink, or if you are, or if you're Jamie Dimon,
you're Putin,
or you're Putin, if you're one of these people making lots of money off of this war, for you this is a huge success, and the more it goes on, the more you benefit. So there are people who are benefiting from this war in a very big way. And these are people of power and influence. And I think that's why the war is dragging on. And I think they would be perfectly happy for this to keep dragging on, because the longer it drags on, the better it is for them. So forget the fact that it increases the possibility of a nuclear exchange. Yeah, details. So there are people out there who have objectives that I think this war serves. And
well, that's how crazy those actual people are, because they'll take you right up to the precipice of nuclear war and stare over the edge and go, "What's over there? What's going to happen when that goes on?" In my view, there are no good options. You look at this now and you think, how can this escalate anymore? Well, the way that it can escalate more is if Iran gives them ballistic missiles, if Iranian troops end up on the ground, if North Korean troops end up on the ground, and then they have a vastly numerically superior force, but then they're also backed with weapon systems to actually engage with that. You know, the Ukrainians are always like, whatever, man, it doesn't matter if Russia conscript 1 million troops, it just doesn't matter. They don't have the resources to get those 1 million troops to the front line, and even if they do, we're going to destroy them anyway. Well,
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know about that.
But they're really good friends with China and North Korea. You know, so they're. I think they've got ways of prolonging this. You know, if they really want to.
And that's the problem.
Yeah, it is.
That's the problem.
Not to mention, now you haven't even mentioned the nukes that Putin is putting into Belarus now. So they're that much closer to the theater of war. And I'm surprised you haven't mentioned this yet. You probably just haven't gotten around to it. But there's news out this weekend that China now is going to be establishing a military base in Cuba.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, that's kind of funny, right? That has come out.
And they said we're putting it there so that we can spy on America. They said, yeah, we're putting it there so we can spy.
We're not hiding anymore. Yeah, it's not under the disguise of some other bullshit.
Yes, we are there to spy on you. Yeah, we're there to spy on you. And you know, part of me says, you know what? Good for you, China. Because because we are building right now, I think an additional 15 new military bases right in China's backyard there in the South China Sea.
When you see the map, they're completely surrounded.
That's right. That's right. So you kind of have to, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? So part of me, I'm kind of warming up to RFK Jr.'s idea of shutting down those overseas bases and sending them home. When you look at the map of overseas U.S. bases, you kind of, what the hell?
I think one thing that he really misses out when he says that, I agree with it, right? Because the massive outgoing cost of that and the expenditure of that is just astronomical, right? And he's like, we're not the world's police force. We need to go home. We need to do that. And why don't you just turn all of those resources inward to make us the most prickly country in the world, so nobody would ever want to invade us and nobody would ever want to mess with us? Well, newsflash, you already are that. Nobody wants to invade you. Nobody could invade you, and if they could invade you, there's so many guns in America, it would never work. So, you're the most prickly country in the world, so it doesn't make any sense. But the thing that he misses is if the U.S. Navy goes away and all of that U.S. forward projected power goes away, it might create chaos in the world's oceans, man, with piracy and all that sort of stuff.
It's one thing to have projected power. It's another thing to have projected power at every other island in the Pacific. At some point you get,
we need fuel, man.
Because look, there are maybe this alien technology, maybe this conference will give us some new energy.
It's happening right now.
But I think there are geopolitical consequences to having so many military bases around the world. 20 years ago we would have thought, well, that's going to make the world more stable because we project an image of power. These days, I think a large part of the world are resentful of that kind of presence around the world, and we see that
it can only go to the heart of the allies type stuff. There's been huge growth in here in Australia, for instance, where the Americans have spent an absolute bomb rebuilding some of our air bases so they can permanently house B-52s and bring B-2 here consistently because we're the world's biggest aircraft carrier. Those places will be plinked off the battle space in the first 2 hours of the war by Chinese ballistic missiles, man. They'll rain down on those air bases and make them completely irrelevant because they know about them. Likewise with Guam, likewise with Diego Garcia, all of those places, they're within ballistic missile striking range, conventional. You don't need nukes, just conventional missiles to destroy the runways, and that's the end of it, right? So it just doesn't make any sense that they continue to grow and expand. But I also see why they're trying to continue to grow and expand, because it's a strategic posture of deterrence. They're trying to deter war.
Well, yeah,
it doesn't make sense.
When was the last time, if you looked at the map of the American bases in the Pacific recently?
Yeah, I did. I saw that the other day, and I
It's
saw
like
that
boom, boom, boom,
report
boom,
about
boom, boom,
Cuba.
boom, boom, boom,
Yeah,
boom.
that's completely surrounding the Chinese mainland. Looks like that, and then they're
Yeah.
surrounded completely.
So China puts a base in Cuba. All right,
How
can't
do you
blame
feel
them.
about that? Like that
Uh,
about the Americans as an American?
well, it doesn't move me one way or the other because listen, they've been sending fucking spy balloons over America now for years. I mean, and then we finally get on to shooting one down. I mean, you got to wonder how hard those guys in that balloon program in China must have been laughing. For
Oh man,
all those.
every
I
day.
can't believe it. I
Imagine
can't
them coming.
believe it.
Imagine them coming to work with their brew, going, "That's still there, man. Can you believe it? It's like it's been a week and a half, man."
Yeah.
I'll tell you how I feel about it, right? Because we had a similar thing happen here in the South Pacific, and it's very small here where we are. I can get on a plane and be in Fiji in 4 hours, right? I can get on a plane and be in Perth in 4 hours. It's kind of equidistant to where it is. I can get on a plane and go to the Solomon Islands and be there in a couple of hours as well, or the Cook Islands. Or what's worse is PNG. It's just there, just north, right? So the Chinese have been coming into the Southwest Pacific and buying up all of those things and using their Belt and Road strategies like, hey, we'll build you this infrastructure, we'll do this, we'll do that. And for years and years, Australia has in some ways, the arrogant Australian politicians have, in my view, mistreated all of the Southwest Pacific countries, and ScoMo is such a condescending politician. He was just horrible. And he always, in my view, he always spoke down to these people, and he was always really rude to these people, like, shut up, take your $1 billion and get on with it, sort of thing. And they didn't want that, right? They don't. It's the same as in Africa, right? The Chinese are very successful in Africa because they don't go in there and say, how much money do you want? The governments don't want the money. They want the infrastructure. They want the jobs. They want their country to be built to come out of the poverty that they're in. They don't just want a handout because they understand that we can't do it. We don't have that capacity. And if you give it to us, it's so corrupt here, it makes it very hard to get it done. So if you come and do it for us, so their One Belt and Road initiatives are very good for African countries like that. And they took the same model here to the South Pacific. And the Solomon Islands bid on it. And they chose the Chinese over us, after the gazillions of dollars that we've spent on there. When our military went there and interfered in Solomon Island politics because they were all killing each other, we intervened in there. And then in PNG, Papua New Guinea, they did the same thing. Here's a little port that you could have just here. And I'm like, when I see that, and if that becomes a deep water port for the Chinese Navy that are literally just a couple of 100 miles away from us like that, that really pisses me off. Not because the Chinese are there, but because the Australian politicians are an absolute failure. They're a complete and total. They've completely and totally failed to recognise what the people of Papua New Guinea need, what the people of Solomon Islands need, what the people of Fiji need, and they've allowed that to happen because their arrogance is, oh, we'll just give you some more money and then you'll shut up and go away and you'll stay within our sphere of influence. But the reality is that they didn't want that, and these diplomats pretend like they understand the countries that they're in, but that just shows, if the Chinese are in there and they're winning, and they are, that just shows me that our diplomats are completely useless.
Yep. Well, that's exactly why I think that Ukraine is going to end up in the BRICS agreement. And after all this money we sent them, that's why heads are going to be exploding.
My head's going to explode
Washington.
now.
Ukraine's going to
John Kirby's head's exploding and he can't even hear
it. So I think that Ukraine is going to end up in the BRICS agreement, and they're going to have wonderful probably the best road they've ever had, because they've never had good roads. They probably have the best infrastructure in a few years in the country has ever had. And this is a question I've been meaning to ask you, Rob. So this is a good segue into it. Okay, so we all know that Ukraine is famous for its corruption, worldwide. Everyone knows that it is one of the most corrupt countries in the world, and certainly the most corrupt in Europe. All right, so Ukraine had deep ties to Russia. Bloodlines and all the rest. They used to be part of Russia. They speak
Slavic
Russian.
brothers,
They're Slavic, brothers. So what would be the downside in them being folded into Russia? How would the average Ukrainian life be worse than it was, when they're independent? So,
well,
have you thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's the mistake that I believe the Russians made. I believe if the Russians used, because we're using carrot and stick, right? And they've just wielded the biggest stick that they possibly could. But did they really try and wield the carrot at any point? Did they say, what if instead of this border that we have between us all, what if we lower that border and have an EU style thing and we could open up trade? You guys have got really good stuff there. We've got really good stuff here. What if we come together to prevent a conflict, to stop that from happening? But here's the thing, you're living in a fantasy world because the promises that Western leaders made to Putin had consistently been broken. So Ukraine handed over its nuclear weapons for a security guarantee that they would never be invaded. And then during the Minsk agreements, it came out that it was all bullshit. The whole thing was bullshit to keep Russia at bay and to keep them under wraps. If you read the history of Putin when he came to power in the year 2000, he was actually very pro-Western. He was very, he hated communism. He didn't want anything to do with communism. He didn't believe that socialism was right. And after the disaster of the 1990s and the drunk leader that was in place, he was like, okay, now we've got to get back on track. How do we get back on track? And he established some really good things in the economy. So Putin done a lot of really great things, but he came to power on a lie. He came to power on a fabricated terrorist attack where people were killed, and he was going to be the leader that solved all of those problems. And he had several failures in his leadership along the way, but he did build an incredibly strong Russian economy. It was like maybe one of the strongest economies in the world. He did a lot of really good things. And he was very pro-Western, trying to go out there and do deals and negotiate. And he was always in Europe. And, he did some good things. But the problem is that he was consistently lied to. We're never going to do this. We're not going to expand NATO. We're not going to go any closer. And at every turn, there's a couple of books that I read about him, and it's like at every turn he keeps trying and trying and trying to participate. At one point, they were saying we should fold Russia into NATO, and that's how good relations were, right? But at every turn, he was lied to, and there was a point there where he just kind of washed his hands of it. It's like he went like this: you know what? I just can't be bothered with you anymore. It's not going to work. I'm just going to do the thing here in Russia that I'm going to do, and I'm going to try and grow this country. I'm going to fix the GDP here. We're going to fix the disaster of the 1990s after communism fell, and we're going to move forward. And that's when he focused inwards. And that's when the lies started happening as well. So no matter what utopian view of the conflict that you have between Russia and Ukraine, and lower the borders and trade and, Donbass, whatever, if they want to be part of it, whatever, who cares, get rid of all of that. The fact is he didn't respect the sovereign borders of another country. That's a fact. He didn't respect the Donbass and the Luhansk region, and he invaded there. He did that in Georgia. He did that in Chechnya. And there's a couple of other places that were flashpoints.
Okay.
So when you don't respect the territorial integrity, how can you negotiate?
Okay. Look, for a moment there, I thought you were pro-Russia and pro-Putin. I thought, but okay, so I get it. Then you tied it. You can't be
pro-Putin when you look at the way that. So here's the thing with these dictators, right? I think we've said it a couple of times on this show. The best part about a dictatorship is you don't have to worry about an election. Yep. So the policies that get implemented are actually really good for the country. When you look at Xi Jinping, the policies he's got, these 100-year plans, they're amazing. We don't have that in our society.
100-year plans bullshit. I mean, I'm never impressed with these. Oh yeah, well the Asians they have 100-year. It doesn't impress me at all. You can't foresee what's going to happen 10 years from now, much as 100 years. Don't give me that. I don't buy it.
You're not buying into it.
I think you're giving these Orientals way too much credit. Hey, listen. But my point was, we are in America ostensibly supporting Ukraine as an act of defending democracy. We're doing it. The reason why we're doing it, we're defending democracy. How dare you, invade another country's borders? Our southern border here in America is being overflown. It is not about borders. It is not about.
Do you call bullshit on that democracy thing, though?
Yes, it's bullshit. We're not there to defend democracy.
Because if you were there to defend democracy and stop them taking the ground, you wouldn't have allowed the invasion in 2014 in Crimea to take. Oh, that was always Russia. That's ours. We're taking it back. No, what are you talking about, man? That's the map in Ukraine. That's Ukraine. Now you take what? And then in the eastern part of Ukraine as well, when you're in the Donbass, when you're invading there, and they've been fighting forever, where the Ukrainians are shelling the civilians in that side of the world. And then they shot down the plane, and it's like all this bullshit going on. It's not about...
Look, every Central and South American country, which is pretty darn close to us, is a socialist country. They're all socialists. So if we're defending democracy, you spend a little time locally. Why don't you first before you go? It's not about defending democracy. Okay, there are bigger forces. There's money at work here, and there's but circling back to my point, because I want to, before we run out of time, I want to drive home. I want to nail you down on this. So we're there to defend democracy. Well, what if we just let it play out the way it's going to play out, and Russia takes over Ukraine? All right. So, what's the worst case scenario to the average Ukraine? How is their lives going to be different than before the invasion?
That's the miscalculation that the Russians made. That's why they thought that they were going to be in Kyiv in 3 days, and they were going to overthrow the government, get rid of the corruption, because they thought the Ukrainians thought that. We don't like our government. They're corrupt. They're this. They're that. But the reality is, it would be the same as if...
all right. Yeah, but I'm talking from the West perspective. Why should we be spending so much treasure in defending democracy when those people will be just as well off after Russia takes them over than they were before? Probably even better off.
The Indian foreign minister has the best answer of all to that. So he says. So the same question, not the exact same question, but the same influence was given to him. Like, why is India neutral on this? And he said, well, European problems are Europe's problems. Why should the Indian government be dragged into something that causes us problems when that problem has literally nothing to do with us? Yeah. We're here in India. We don't have problems in bloody India. Never mind, like, Russia or Ukraine. Most Indians couldn't even point to that on a map. It's just, and he's 100% right. Yeah. And why shouldn't India profit from whomever they're dealing with in the world? And they were buying like all the Russian oil at a reduced rate and selling it back to us for a margin. Why shouldn't they do that when you think about it? And that's the country looking after itself. And I believe that he is 100,000% right. Yeah. Why is Australia spending all of our treasure on supporting a country in, the most corrupt country in the world? Yeah. Sure, they were invaded and everything like that. Sure, well, if that was the case, why aren't we fixing South Africa? Yeah. Why aren't we fixing the basket case banana republics in South America? Why aren't we intervening in all of those places? And it's what you said, Ed. It's just all bullshit. The democracy argument, the freedom argument, that's all complete fucking bullshit, man. Yeah. It's in an event, it's in an effort, and the ultimate outcome is to completely destabilize Russia and to completely destroy that country. That's actually what the proxy war is about. That's the complete destabilization of Russia.
Yes. Why don't you just be honest about it? Just say it. Just say it, guys. That's what it's about. It's not about democracy in Ukraine. And
it was never about weapons of mass destruction either.
No. If Russia does take over Ukraine, it's not the end of the world. They all speak Russian already. They all have friends in Russia. Life is not.
I don't look at it from that perspective, because they blew the dam. Whoever blew the dam in the last couple of days, right? And it's destroyed. It's come out and destroyed. Estimated 4,000 people have been displaced that they know about so far, right? So those 4,000 people are never ever going back to their homes. That is an absolute catastrophe of humanity. So it's easy for us to kind of sit here and say, well, what's the big deal if the Russians take over Ukraine and they're part of Ukraine? Will they stop at Ukraine? They're going to go into Poland next, and then everybody, all this bullshit, right? So I look at that and think, I call bullshit on all of that now as well. I used to think that, but I call bullshit on it now, where I think the Russians just want a buffer between them and Europe. That's all they ever wanted.
Exactly right.
Yeah. They couldn't get a guarantee that NATO wouldn't encroach any further because NATO was just expanding. And now they've just come out and they've simply said that we had to act because you forced us to act,
Yeah.
because you continuously lied to us, you continuously expanded, you continuously doing all of these things, and now look what's happening. And man, it's all bullshit, hey?
I don't think Putin, again, I've said this many times before, I don't think Putin, again, really wants Ukraine officially part of Russia, because he wants that buffer. And if Ukraine was officially part of Russia again, okay, there he is. Now he's right up against NATO. He wants that buffer. So I think what he would like is like a puppet government. There's a government there that, yes, they're independent, but they're very friendly to Russia. You know?
Well, that's what was there before they
right.
were overthrown, right? In the revolution, and the Ukrainians didn't like that, but then that revolution was instigated by people in the West, by the CIA. Just want to say.
Amen. So I think, look, we just solved everything in like 30 minutes there.
Listen, if they want to negotiate, we can get them to a table here in Cronulla. I got one right there. We can get Xi here. We can talk about Belt and Road. We can get Putin here. I don't know if Zelensky. He can dial in via Zoom, man.
And you'll just for a small consultation fee, right, Rob?
I'll do it for nothing, man.
Well, at least have them pay for the cookies, or.
I don't know about you, Ed, but like the longer this goes on, the more pissed off about it I feel. Like at first I was like outraged that Russia invaded, and then I was like pro-Ukrainian. I'm like, go fight, get rid of the invaders, get rid of those orcs. And I was like that. And the more I see Zelensky traveling around with his hand out asking for money, put a fucking suit on, man. Like you don't realize, like you just
show a little respect.
You've lost the support, and you're losing support. And you're losing support of the Americans. You're losing support of the allies here in Australia. If Australia gives them one more fucking cent, I'll scream at the top of my lungs. Enough. Yeah. And I saw the other day there was an M113, one of our old Vietnam era APCs that were there, and I saw it was all shot up and it was destroyed and stuff like that. And this like soldier standing in front, he's like fucking all this, and I thought, dude, like that gear that we're giving to you, don't you realize it's worth hundreds of millions of dollars? We're giving you all of our equipment and our treasure, and our soldiers don't have that to protect our country. We're giving that so you can fight on your behalf. And then you go drive straight into a fucking minefield and get hit by an artillery strike in the middle of the day, and you can't maintain a 50-meter spacing between vehicles. What the fuck is going on there, man? Like you're completely destroying my support for the war. And now we're going to give you fighter jets, and now and we're going to give you attack AMS missiles. Really? This is what's actually happening? This is where it's going? And you can't you can't even be bothered showing me the wins that you're actually having either. Like,
no, I think the Ukrainians are quickly losing a lot of support among the populace. The elites still are, they're still loyal to the cause, but the people, protests have been popping up all over Europe.
Yeah, the Germans don't want it at all, man.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the elites, they still want it. They're still, all in, which takes me back to there are people benefiting from this war. It's not us.
Yeah, it's not us.
It's not the populace. So.
It might not matter anyway. We're all going to die in a nuclear holocaust in the next couple of weeks. So we'll be okay. Everything will be fine, Ed. It will be good.
Okay, well, go China. Go China.
Go Belt and Road.
Go Belt and Road. That's right. Solve everything.
Okay. All right, Ed. Thanks for a fun show, mate. I really appreciate you spending some time here with me every day like you do. You're the best co-host in the world, man. I love you, bro. Thank you so much.
Thank you, buddy.
I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not following us as the podcast, please open up your favorite podcasting app and tune in there as well. Don't forget to come on over to Twitter, to Telegram, and we're also on Rumble as a backup as well. That pretty much wraps it up for today's show. We'll see you same bat time, same
bat channel.
All right, let's get out of here. Bye, everyone.